Welcome to CSBJ Radio. CSBJ Radio is the premier online business talk radio show in the Southeast. CSBJ proactively connects, informs, and engages its listeners in all aspects of small business. Discover the entrepreneur in you with CSBJ Radio. Now, here's your host, Greg Wilson.
Hello and welcome into another edition of CSBJ Radio. I am your host, Greg Wilson, also the publisher and owner of Connections Small Business Journal. You can find us online at www.connectionssbj.com if you're interested in advertising opportunities. Our telephone number, 706-289-7863. Again, that is 706-289-7863. You can find us utilizing every aspect of social media, specifically Facebook. Our Facebook page is www.facebook.com/connectionssbj. We do have a Facebook group as well. I believe right now we're well over 260 members of this closed group. You have to request membership and you have to be granted membership into this group based on actually having a business. All right, we just don't put anyone into the group. You actually have to have an active business, and we do research, all right, and actually validate and verify that you are a business owner. The title of today's podcast, and we're going to jump right in, is Safety and Security. Again, the title of today's podcast is Safety and Security. And quite honestly, this title is motivated by several events that have taken place recently in the news as it relates to safety and security as a whole. Now, I know that those of us that are homeowners, maybe renters, we have friends, we have family. It's very important for us to think about safety and security. Personal safety, safety for our family, the security of our family as well. And those are very, very important and quite honestly take precedent. But for those of us that are small business owners, I want to encourage us today that we need to have an awareness of safety and security. We're going to break this podcast up into two segments. The first segment, we're going to talk about 4 ways to protect your small business. And the second segment, quite honestly, is going to get a little bit deeper and maybe even on a touchy subject, and that subject is dealing with an active shooter. And again, the podcast today is truly motivated by just several events that have taken place just even this week. Today is just Tuesday. Last night, Monday night, there was an active shooter at a mall in, I believe, New Jersey. All right. Now, in a mall, you have several small businesses. You may have your JCPenney's or your Sears or, your larger stores, but several of those stores are small in nature and are considered small businesses. So I want us to be just aware of safety and security. We're going to talk about, again, 4 ways to protect your small business. And the second segment of this podcast, we're going to get into dealing with, again, what I'm labeling a touchy subject. And that is dealing with an active shooter. 4 ways to protect your small business. Number 1, we need to protect our assets. Now, we know that when we think about safety and security, I'm not 100% dealing with the crime aspect of it. Yes, that is a huge component, a very large component, but that's not the totality of protecting your assets. Disasters could be, someone walking into your store, and attempting to rob you, but a disaster can also be natural in nature. Floods, tornadoes, hailstorms, hurricane force winds, whatever the case may be, heavy snow, believe it or not, can be deemed a disaster. And in protecting our assets for our business, just as we do with our homeowners insurance or our renters insurance, our life insurance, we need to make sure that, again, that we have insurance on our business as well. We need to make sure that we keep all of the important documents, whether it be employee files, a copy of your lease, insurance, tax documents, purchase orders, receipts, whatever it is, whatever we deem as very important. Each of these documents needs to be safely stored. All right. And so how do we safely store and protect these assets? And this is when I recommend a safe. Safes offer very convenient storage. There are many models available depending on, the specifics that you're looking for. Several models that I'm very familiar with are actually models that are bolted even to the floor. They are fireproof. So if there's money to be left in them, if there are documents to be left in them, these documents, this money is safe and secure. Why? Number one, the fireproof safe is bolted to the floor. Okay. They make them now where the bolts are actually inside the safe, bolted to the floor. That would be a recommendation depending on the business that you're in. If you're in a smaller business, I still recommend maybe a fireproof safe, that can withstand, X amount of temperatures. All right. The second thing is to be armed with alarms. Be armed with alarms. Now, if you choose to invest in a firearm, maybe you already have a firearm and want to arm yourselves that way, which is fine. We don't have an issue with that. But I would encourage you to be very familiar with the laws, city laws, county laws, state laws of what it takes to bear arms. Okay, we want to legally bear arms. We want to legally be able to carry a firearm, and protect our business. But be armed with alarms. Many commercial codes, depending on the business that you're actually in, many commercial codes actually require and even regulate, the use of smoke detectors. They regulate and require the use of even carbon monoxide detectors. All right. So I would encourage us, if we have a business, that we need to be aware of the commercial code. And you can check with your local county, you can check with your local city government to determine and to find out, the required code for the business. And these codes are based on square footage. All right. So depending on the square footage of the business that you're operating. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about a home-based business. I'm talking about a brick and mortar location. The use of these fire alarms, the smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, are all regulated by, state, city, and county code, and they are all different depending on the square footage of that business. All right. So again, I would encourage you to look at that. Safeguard your computers. Several attacks on a business, don't necessarily have to walk through your front door, come through your back door, literally. They can be cyber in nature. All right. Your website could very well be hacked. Your computers at the job could very well be hacked. Your server could very well be hacked into. We have very astute students, and they could, on a whim or on a prank, try to hack into a particular business. And then we have those, attacks that are more sinister in nature. All right. They're not games. They're literally attacking the business to shut the business down. All right. So again, safeguard your computers. Be aware of the web browsers that you're using. I encourage the antivirus packages. You have several out there. Norton's, AVG, Kaspersky, which is my favorite, by the way. These antivirus packages actually help prevent your computer or computers from being affected by virus attack and even certain security attacks as well. So again, safeguard your computers. And finally, simply keep an eye out. Studies have shown that yes, surveillance cameras are good, they have their place. Alarms are good, they have their place. But keeping your own personal eye out while you're there, working within your business, your employees are there working within the business, keep an eye out. Greet customers when they walk in the door. Again, studies have shown that an individual that has been greeted is less likely to steal, and is less likely to rob a location. Why? Because he or she was actually physically greeted when they walked through the door to begin with. All right. It shows that, hey, I, the business owner, I see you. I'm looking at you, and I'm actively engaged in you being in my store. All right. Come from behind the counter. These are different things that employers and employees can do, again, to keep an eye out on the business. And I want to backtrack just a little bit here to when I mentioned be armed with alarms. You know, several years ago, fresh out of high school, I used to work for ADT Security, and we installed burglar alarms in homes. We installed burglar alarms in businesses. One thing I want to ensure and make sure that each burglar alarm has, if you choose to be armed with alarms as we recommended, be sure that this alarm, whether at home or at your business, has a panic button. All right, this is a silent button that an assailant does not even know has been pressed. The assailant does not even know, they're not aware that you've triggered this alarm. It's a silent alarm that goes straight to the police department. All right, it's called a panic button, and when the panic button is hit, there's no audible alarm that is heard. You know, no blinking lights, no flashing lights, but the signal has been sent directly to the police department, and the police department will be en route to your location. So I do want to mention that if we choose to install a burglar alarm in our stores, in our business locations, be sure that it has a panic button. Depending on the size of the business, I would actually recommend maybe even more than one panic button. If you're a small business, maybe one panic button will get you by. But if you have a large small business location, you know, you may need, you know, maybe 1, 2, or 3 even panic buttons installed throughout your business. Okay, we're going to take a quick break right now, and after we come back from break, we're going to get into dealing with an active shooter. Again, I know that's going to be a little bit of a touchy subject, but I truly believe that is needed. Okay, thank you for tuning back in with us. Again, this is Greg Wilson, the owner and publisher of Connection Small Business Journal. We are recording this podcast live in the studio, and we are dealing with the topic of safety and security. Safety and security. And, you know, during the first segment, we discussed, 4 things that we can do, to protect our small business. And now I really want to get into something that is, if I can label this, heavy on my heart, and that is dealing with an active shooter. This entire podcast, as I mentioned earlier, is motivated by just several things that I am noticing, in the news. It doesn't take you any time to, CNN.com or open up a newspaper, read USA Today or television show, whatever tool you use to get your news, and see that, we are having a major problem in our country. And this major problem is, people that are choosing to do bodily harm to other people, utilizing firearms. All right, so we want to get into right now dealing with an active shooter. Just a little bit of history. Back in 2008, again, this is old data, but I want to use it because I think it's very important to show how far we've actually come, and not necessarily in a positive direction. So in 2008, there were a total of 421 total workplace shootings that were reported in 2008. 421. Now, I don't have the numbers for 2012, but I'm certain that it was more than 421. Listen to the data that we have from 2008. 71% of these 421 shootings were robbers or other criminal assailants. 71%. 12% were current or former co-workers. 8% were customer or clients. And 9% of these shootings that took place were dealing with a personal relationship. The largest component, robbery or other criminalistic assailants, other criminal behavior. 71% of all the workplace shootings were a direct result of robbery. Now, what is an active shooter? Some may say, well, that's a remedial question, but I do want to give us a definition for it. An active shooter is an individual or individuals actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined or populated area. All right, this individual is not a barricaded suspect. He or she is not barricaded themselves into a building. They're not even considered maybe even hostage holders. They don't even consider someone that's holding a hostage an active shooter. No, an active shooter is literally he's on the move. He or she is on the move. They're moving through a facility, indiscriminately shooting people. That is an active shooter. In many cases, these active shooters, use firearms with no pattern. There's not an apparent pattern or a method even that they use in the selection of their victims. All right, they could just indiscriminately shoot. We saw this recently, with the TSA agent. The assailant walked into LAX, which is a business. Walked into the airport, which again is a business. Of course, shot, fatally wounding a TSA agent. And again, got on the escalator, went upstairs, and indiscriminately started shooting again. So again, that is an active shooter. I am not going to get into what triggers an active shooter. There are sciences, there are psychologists and psychiatrists that can get into the red flags and their thought patterns, the way they feel and their behavior patterns. I'm not going to get into that. This is a small business radio show, so I'm going to stick to the small business aspect of it. And that is the preparation for an active shooter. We must and need to be very prepared for dealing with an active shooter. Every incident that takes place dealing with an active shooter happens, very quickly. They often begin and conclude quickly, and it leaves the facility management no time to coordinate a proper response if the proper response was not already in place prior to the shooting. All right, that's where you and I, as small business owners, come into play. We must have an active plan in place on dealing with this type of behavior, on dealing with this type of situation. And I truly hope that we don't have to experience this, but we see many, many cases of business owners having to deal with an active shooter at a business, at a school, or some other facility, and we want to be properly prepared should this actually take place. All right. So employees, let's deal with the employees aspect. I'm gonna deal with two components: the employee and the employer. All right. So our employees need to review response protocols prior to an incident and actively participate in emergency response training. In a nutshell, role play. Have someone, if you guys want to make it fun or for that particular period of time, have someone dress up like the assailant. All right. And our team, our employees must respond properly, effectively, according to the plan that we as the employer put into place. All right. So again, I'm going to repeat that. Review response protocols prior to an incident and actively participate in emergency response training. That is very critical for our team members to do. Learn how to recognize and report potential workplace violence and suspicious behavior. All right. Our employees need to feel comfortable coming to you as an employer. They need to feel comfortable coming to you to discuss workplace related issues. If employee A has been saying different things that are threatening in nature, all right, the employee that heard it should be comfortable coming to you to inform you. And for us as the business owner, or what I'm labeling as today as the employer, we need to develop an anti-workplace violent policy, have the procedures in place, and regularly communicate them to employees through training and evaluation. We need to have during our team meetings. I trust that we are having team meetings with our employees, and if we are having them, we need to be proactively in training our employees and even evaluating their responses, to workplace related violence. We need to set an environment that encourages confidentiality. All right, so the employee A that overheard something, again, we want them to feel comfortable coming to us. Quite honestly, a lot of companies are setting up toll-free numbers, an anonymous toll-free number that an employee can call in and say, hey, I've noticed behavior X, Y, and Z going on in the workplace. I've experienced behavior X, Y, Z. All right, and once we as the employer or the business owner hears this, then we don't need to wait to investigate. We hear it, we immediately begin the investigation. We immediately call an employee in, and talk to them and try to cut this thing off before it blows way out of proportion. All right, we need to document every incident of conflict, every threat, every case of harassment. Even if it's minor, even if it's minute in nature, I truly believe that we as business owners should still actually be documenting these cases. And finally, dealing with the employee aspect of it, I think that we need to plan and manage our layoffs. We need to plan and manage, any terminations. We need to plan and manage sensitive evaluations. Several years ago when I worked in corporate America as a supervisor, there was a human resources department in place. And I know a lot of small business owners do not have human resources departments. But for corporate America, we had a human resource department in place. And yes, unfortunately, I had to let people go. But prior to letting them go, that termination was planned and managed out. Human resources was involved. Security was involved. Everyone was involved. The attorneys were involved. It was planned and managed. So these are some things that we can do to try to cut off and be prepared for an active shooter. And again, an active shooter is one that is actively engaging people. I mean, they're firing indiscriminately at people with a firearm. All right. And these active shooters, we've seen too many cases recently in the news, where people are killed as a direct result of active shooters. So I truly, again, this podcast was motivated simply by that reason. Why? Because I want you and I as small business owners, all right, to protect and secure our employees, protect and secure our businesses, protect and secure our families and ourselves. All right. So again, we appreciate you tuning in today. take these things into place. We're going to be placing this article on our website. Again, our website is www.connectionssbj.com. Again, that is connectionssbj.com. If you are looking for us through Facebook, our Facebook page is facebook.com/connectionssbj. Again, that's www.facebook.com/connectionssbj. You can find us again on Twitter, Pinterest, and every other social media, Foursquare out there. If you're looking for advertising opportunities, give us a call. We look forward to talking to you. Our telephone number is 706-289-7863. Again, 706-289-7863. Thank you for tuning in.